Kimisato Ayaka is coming in for her first ever rerun in Genshin Impact. Many of you must be asking, should you roll for Ayaka? The answer is yes, you should. Yeah, that really is. I know you don't hear that often on this channel, but if you don't have Ganyu, the answer is that you absolutely should just roll for Ayaka. End of video, goodbye. With that being said though, let's talk about Ayaka, and before that, as always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let's get started. Straight up, I'll be honest though, I think Ayaka currently is one of the best DPS in the game. If you don't have Ganyu who can already fill the crowd DPS role, rolling Ayaka should be a really easy, yeah you should, if you're looking for a meta reason, as currently crowd DPS is one of the best in the game, with freeze team being pretty much at the top of the meta. With doing the test of time, I think Ayaka has definitely proven herself to be a really powerful DPS, and today I'll happily rate Ayaka at a 4 out of 5 value rating, which means she's really good for your primo gem, and again you should definitely pull for her if you don't have her or Ganyu to fill the crowd DPS role. Of course, not being a must pull at a 5 out of 5, but dramatically better than the average 3 out of 5 character, which indicate that a character is balanced. As a DPS character, Ayaka deal her damage mostly through the method of using her elemental burst. Her elemental bursts dominate majority of her damage in a rotation, and the rest of the downtime is usually filled using her charge attack, going through your entire team rotation to battery Ayaka, or just maintaining your buff in general. This means that your main primary objective is to make sure that you can hit entire elemental burst on Ayaka, and as long as you can do that, you can stack a bunch of buff onto your Ayaka such as Kazu or TDDS, and you can do a bunch of damage. The good news here is that it is not too difficult to hit your Ayaka elemental burst, as it is a bunch of front-loaded damage on top of the fact that Ayaka being crowd means you can freeze the enemy to make sure that they do not escape Ayaka elemental burst. This means that a really invested Ayaka or a Ayaka team can potentially just do a bunch of burst damage upfront and just one-shotting enemy here and there, which means that it leaves you with almost no trouble. As Ayaka is a crowd character, she has access to the freeze team, which is one of the top of the meta at the current moment, with the freeze reaction being able to provide you with a huge amount of comfort and CC into your enemy. On top of that, freeze team have really good access to Hydro and Anemo support like Kazo or Venti, which can group the enemy together, and then you can freeze the enemy together in one place, and then you will be able to land your Ayaka elemental burst onto all the enemy to do a bunch of AoE damage at once, which is really good. Not to mention the fact that Ayaka have really amazing weapon and artifact choice, from the free to play option Amenoma Kageuchi, which is a really amazing craftable Inazuma weapon, and top of the fact that she has access to Blizzard Share, which is currently one of the best DPS set in the game, giving you a 40% critical rate. Ayaka just have so many tools to help her do that amazing damage, which is overall make her one of the best, if not the best DPS character in Genshin Impact. Ganyu is the only real competition when it comes down to DPSing with Ayaka, as Ganyu is also a crowd characters who have the exact same access to all of these two that I just mentioned. Overall, both of these characters are really strong, so simply pick the one that you like more. There is definitely benefit of picking Ganyu over Ayaka, but there's also a lot of benefit of picking Ayaka over Ganyu. Just like many of the other Genshin Impact characters, Ayaka is definitely not perfect and have drawback built into her kit. For example, as mentioned earlier half in the video, Ayaka is quite dependent on her elemental burst. What that means is that Ayaka is actually decently energy hungry, as she is a 80 elemental cost burst, and you have to make sure that you recharge the entire elemental burst every single rotation, because not casting your elemental burst will be problematic. Fortunately though, you do have a good amount of tools to recharge that energy, some stuff like Amenoma Kageuchi to a second crowd battery that you usually run in your team, like a Sackville Diona or a Faf Lance Rosaria. Overall, these things will help battery your Ayaka a lot, but Ayaka will still run into minor amount of energy problem, as anytime that you are caught without energy, you might just be losing out a lot of DPS. However, the biggest problem of Ayaka when it comes down to gameplay is of course the fact that what if you don't hit your entire elemental burst? For example, boss type enemy are unfreezable, or some enemy are really mobile that it's just hard to hit your elemental burst on. As again and again mentioned in this video, most of your damage come out from your elemental burst. That means that anytime your elemental burst does not connect or only connect for a little bit, you start losing out a lot of your damage, which could be dramatically damaging to your overall DPS potential. Enemy like Thunder Manifestation are really troublesome for Ayaka, as they are really mobile, but you also cannot freeze them to make sure that they stay in one place. So hitting your entire elemental burst might be a little bit iffy, and sometimes just really difficult to do, making Ayaka not the perfect DPS to bring into these fights. You can apply a similar statement to some of the other encounter in Genshin Impact, such as Magu Genki. While he's less problematic to face as Ayaka, it's still not the prettiest fight to bring Ayaka in, especially given the fact that you cannot freeze him, so you already lose the Blizzard Share bonus already. You can still throw your Ayaka Elemental Burst during some of his window where he doesn't move, but you might have to wait for that window to show up, which means that you lose potential DPS uptime, or maybe you try to throw it out and then he moves and then you lose damage. Overall, there is certain problem when it comes to these encounters when you are using your Ayaka, so just know that Ayaka is definitely not perfect in that regard. On top of the fact that one of my personal complaints about Ayaka Elemental Burst ever since she came out is that her Elemental Burst is quite small in the AoE radius. With enemy perfectly grouped up, you can reasonably hit multiple enemy, such as using a grouper like Kazu or Venti, but you cannot guarantee that this is always the case, especially when your flow have multiple enemy, or maybe the enemy are just ungroupable. This can be seen in the Abyss Troll 3-2, where you fight against the two Geovicious brother and they will not group. That means that it is practically impossible to use your Ayaka Elemental Burst to hit both of the enemy at the same time, just because of how they work. The most important thing about Ayaka though is that she does have that annoying dash, which some people don't mind it and some people hate it. It comes down to your preference, and it's not for me to decide for you, but I just want to make it an important call out that it might be a deal breaker for some people simply because of the dash. So just be aware of that before you pull Ayaka. Strictly speaking, comparing Ayaka and Ganyu together, I will actually say that Ayaka will outperform Ganyu in scenario where she does work. However, just know that Ayaka doesn't always work everywhere, where Ganyu's biggest selling point is her unconditional charge attack, which means that Ganyu is more favorable to work in multiple different scenarios. Aside from that, something worth noting is that against free plus tightly grouped up enemy, Ganyu can actually outperform Ayaka because of quadratic scaling. Nevertheless, both of these characters are really strong, so just again pick the one that you like more. If you're watching this video though, there's a pretty high chance you skipped the Ganyu rerun that came like 2 patches ago, or you're a new player. In both cases, you probably should just pick Ayaka anyway. Ayaka have a pretty significant advantage though, and that is just being overall easier to draft and cheaper to draft in general. When you are playing Ayaka, you can actually get away with using cheaper Hydro character like Xingqiu's or even Barber to draft a freeze team. It might not be the most optimal, especially when you're comparing to using something like Kokomi or Mona in a AoE environment, but it certainly does work and can get you started right away, where Ganyu is pretty much limited to using either Mona or Kokomi. That also means that you can roll for Ayaka even if you don't have a proper Hydro applicator ready at the current moment, which are Kokomi, Mona, or even the latest Hydro character Ayato, and you can get away for now using Xingqiu's or Barber and simply look to pick one of those characters up in their upcoming rerun or whenever you lose a 50-50 to Mona. Kick it. Overall, there's actually not a lot to say about Ayaka except for the fact that she is really powerful, and if you're missing a cryo character for your freeze team and you have Primo to spare, then you actually should just pull for Ayaka. It's not really common to recommend pulling for a character on this channel, but I think Ayaka truly takes the spotlight for being one of the most powerful characters in Genshin Impact that deserve your Primo gem. In fact, even though in this video we compared Ganyu and Ayaka multiple times because they both occupy the crowd DPS slot, you can actually still pull for Ayaka if you own Ganyu, because you can simply put both Ayaka and Ganyu together to draft a really powerful freeze team. And that's pretty much it. So if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next time.